Hello everybody, my name is Nate Moore. I'm a member of the Science Department at General McLean High School, and I am beginning my 10th year of teaching at General McLean High School this year. I'm dual certified in both biology and chemistry, and this year I'll have the opportunity to teach classes from both disciplines. This year, as I'm sure we're all aware, is going to be a year like no other. There will be new challenges, but with new challenges come new opportunities to learn and grow in ways that we never thought possible before. So I have no doubt that we'll be learning and growing in these new ways together. For the course, most of what we will do will be on the iPad. In fact, at this point in time, my plan is to conduct 99% of everything that we do on the iPad and distribute and collect all work through Schoology. If the event occurs that I would need to give a hard copy handout, I think that it would be rare this year. So aside from your iPad, you will need a folder just for the miscellaneous handouts that we might come up with from time to time. I would like to begin now with a tour of my classroom and then a brief description of the course that you will be. Here's our classroom. As you can see, it's a lab and classroom and one. It seats 12 students socially distanced, and as we work through sanitizing procedures this year, we will look to incorporate labs as well. Now, at this time, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Chemistry 1 Accelerated and the material that we will discuss this semester. The first unit of Chem 1 Accelerated deals with defining the science of chemistry and discussing measurement a great deal. So we will focus on what's called inorganic chemistry. That's always where introductory chemistry classes start. However, I do like to give students an overall view of some of the different branches of chemistry. And then we really dive into measurement a great deal. We spend time talking about the uncertainty in measurement and a concept known as significant figures, because this is the student's first real exposure to an intense physical science. When they took physical science in middle school, it was a nice introduction to physics and chemistry. Then they took biology when they arrived at the high school, which was a focus on life science. But now in chemistry, which is generally the course you'll take after biology, we spend time diving into, again, the physical sciences in a really more in-depth way. And so it's really important that we lay a foundation with measurement and a concept known as significant figures before we move on any further. After we talk about measurement and define chemistry, we dive into the atom. And some of this will be review for the students from their physical science days, but then we quickly start layering in more complex understandings of the atom. And I'd like to just mention what the picture here is about, because it seems to have nothing to do with an atom, but it's actually one of the paper and pencil experiments or labs that we incorporate into the curriculum. And that is to imagine that if the nucleus of the atom were blown up to the size of a basketball, how far out would its electrons travel? So I've got the pin marking General McLean High School at the letter A there. And if the nucleus of the atom were a basketball in General McLean High School, then the electrons would travel out in a radius of about 11 to 12 kilometers. And that gives you the red circle on the map there. And that's just one of the experiences that we incorporate to try to help appreciate the structure of the atom, because when it comes to the atom, just the nucleus is really the solid part of the atom. So just that basketball would be the solid part. The electrons are whizzing around in that big sphere around the nucleus, but they are moving so fast and they're so tiny that the atom is mostly empty space. So it's kind of fun to take a look at the atom from that perspective, and we bring a bunch of other different perspectives into our discussion as well to try to, again, elucidate what that really abstract concept of the atom actually is. Once we've talked about the atom, we get into what is the first brand new content for most students, and that is chemical nomenclature, or in other words, how do you name chemical compounds? And we learn 3 different systems of chemical nomenclature. We learn how to name ionic inorganic compounds, molecular compounds, and acids. And each one has its own unique naming conventions. It's actually kind of like learning a foreign language, at least from what I remember of learning a foreign language, where you learn how to conjugate verbs and things of that nature. Nomenclature has its own rules, just like the foreign language does. And so we're not memorizing a ton of different names per se, but we are memorizing a set of rules and learning how to apply those rules in unique situations. And I should also mention, while we're talking about it, that spelling in this unit has to be perfect down to the letter. And students will have many different resources to consult while they are working on this unit, but we are such sticklers for spelling in this unit because, quite honestly, the difference of one letter versus another can mean a completely different chemical compound, and as a result, a completely different reaction. So again, it's very important to pay attention to detail when you're writing the names of the chemicals in this unit. In our 4th unit, we really start diving into chemical reactions. So the last unit, chemical nomenclature, we will bring forward with us into everything else that we do this semester. And quite honestly, I should have said this at the beginning, but chemistry builds on itself. You cannot forget what came before in order to be successful on what is currently happening or what will come next. We have to bring it all forward. So we're going to bring our chemical nomenclature forward into this discussion of chemical reactions. And in this unit, we will learn about 5 basic types of inorganic chemical reactions. And in a matter similar to what we did with nomenclature, we will learn a specific set of rules for each reaction. We will learn how to identify it based on the chemical formulas that are involved. And then eventually we'll work to a point where the students will be able to look at the 2 things going in to the reaction, known as the reactants, and we will ask them to predict the products based on those patterns of behavior that we've discussed and laid out for them as the rules surrounding the chemical reactions. So again, we'll discuss 5 basic types of inorganic chemical reactions, and we will get pretty in depth with that because it provides a strong foundation for success in AP chemistry or in college chemistry coming down the line. In our 5th unit, we take a look at reactions in solution. So we are kind of building off of unit 4, but when reactions are happening in solution, when they're dissolved in, when the reactants are dissolved in water, there's a few new twists that come into play, and it kind of bears separating those out from the original discussion of reactions. So again, we're building upon the knowledge that we had that came before. In addition to reactions in solution in this unit, we will also talk about a different topic called colligative properties. And that's one of my favorite words to say. It's one of my favorite topics to dive into because it's actually one of the most practical aspects of chemistry that we can apply here living in Erie County, Pennsylvania. So colligative properties are why salt melts ice, essentially. Why do we put salt on the sidewalks in the winter? And it turns out that there's a lot of different equations that you can incorporate in describing the interactions that are happening and really dive into, why chemically we're putting salt on the sidewalks in order to melt ice and keep the roads safe. So again, we'll talk about reactions in solution and that other topic, colligative properties. And the final topic that we get to in Chemistry 1 Accelerated is the quantum mechanical model of the atom. And this is really, again, it's kind of one of those building topics that students will take forward into more advanced chemistry classes, and they need in order to provide a foundation for those more advanced chemistry classes. But also, if the students are not inclined to take more advanced chemistry classes, it's it's a new way to look at an atom. So most chemistry experiences that they've had, and quite honestly, we'll use the model on the left throughout most of this class even. Most chemistry experiences describe atoms as kind of like a solar system where you've got the electrons orbiting around the nucleus, kind of like the planets around the sun. But atoms are really so much more complex than that and so much more interesting than that. The electrons don't actually orbit like planets. They whiz around the nucleus in all these different patterns and different shapes and do all these really amazing things, quite honestly. And so we get a chance to kind of start looking at what the quantum mechanical model of the atom is in this unit. And again, that will either give students a new way to look at the world around them or possibly provide that building block for the more advanced chemistry classes down the road. As I mentioned before, about 99% of the work that we will do this year will be distributed and collected through Schoology. The students are quite familiar with this at this point in time, at least working through the iPad app, but I would like to take a moment to highlight something else that I think will be crucial this year, and that is that if you sign on to Schoology through schoology.generalmcclain.org in a web browser like Safari on the iPad, and I know it seems silly that signing in on Safari versus the app would have any difference, but it actually does. Because when you sign in on a web browser, if I have set an assignment as due and a student wants to check whether or not something was submitted, Schoology has a neat feature, or at least it has in all other years previous, where when you are in a web browser, it will flag overdue assignments in the sidebar for you. So it is another way to stay on top of your work, not only in my class, but in all of the classes that you will take this year. So again, signing on to schoology.generalmcclain.org through a web browser will let you view your overdue assignments. And last but not least, even though we will be using Schoology extensively, PowerSchool will still be the official grade of record. So we need to just make sure that we're both on the same page with that. And if you have any questions at all about grades throughout the course, please ask me. Feel free to ask sooner rather than later. And we will, again, be looking at PowerSchool as the official grade of record. Thanks for taking the time to take the tour of the classroom with me and listen to a little bit more about the course. I'm sure that I have not answered all of your questions about the course at this point, but that's to be expected. If you have any questions at this point in time or throughout the year, I think email is going to be the best way to contact me this year, at least for initial contact, and my email is nathanmoore, nathanmoore @generalmcclain.org. And from there, we can correspond through email, or we can arrange a phone call or a virtual meeting to answer any questions or address any concerns that you might have throughout the year. Again, I anticipate this year is going to present us with many challenges, most of which we don't anticipate at this point in time. So together, we will get through this. And in the meantime, stay safe and all the best to you and your family.